The wind tore across the cliffside with the shriek of a warning. Rain struck the stone floor of the training hall, each drop a metronome counting the silence between thought and action. A lone warrior knelt, shoulders tense, breath uneven. His body was trained, honed through years of practice, but beneath the surface, his mind quivered. Skill alone had carried him this far, but skill without presence was brittle, a blade that could shatter against the first strike of real pressure. The mentor entered without announcement, his steps measured, his presence a quiet gravity. The air seemed to bend around him, stilling the chaotic rush inside the warrior's mind. He observed without speaking, noting the tension in the shoulders, the quick dart of eyes, the tremor beneath controlled breathing. This was the first test, not of strength, but of awareness. "You fight as though the world is outside you," the mentor said softly, voice cutting through the storm like a sword through silk. "It is not. The world mirrors the storm inside. Control that first." The warrior bristled, ego flaring. He wanted to prove his strength, to show skill and precision. Yet the mentor's gaze did not judge, only illuminated. Silence became the first teacher. The warrior was forced to feel every heartbeat, every thought, every subtle ripple of fear. Here, technique meant nothing. Only presence mattered. Their training began not with strikes or blocks, but with observation. The mentor had him trace the edge of a blade slowly, feeling the resistance, noting the micro-adjustments of his grip and posture. "Notice what you do not see," the mentor instructed. "Every hesitation, every impulse, these are cracks. Pressure will exploit them." Days passed in measured routines. Sparring became a mirror of the mind, each failed attempt exposing the fissures of ego and impatience. Meditation sessions forced him to sit with discomfort, to watch fear arise without action, to watch doubt whisper lies of inadequacy. Even the quiet moments of rest became exercises in attention, forcing awareness of body, breath, and thought. The warrior began to notice patterns he had ignored. The way his chest rose before a panic set in, how his mind predicted danger and paralyzed decision-making before a strike landed. Fear was no longer external. It lived in the neurons of his brain, in the rapid-fire thoughts that preceded action. The mentor's lessons were harsh in their clarity. Talent is meaningless without inner command. One evening, under a storm-darkened sky, the warrior sparred with the mentor for the first time. The strikes were precise, yet he felt exposed, as if every action betrayed him. The mentor's movements were minimal, economical, yet devastating in presence. Every hesitation was punished, not with anger, but with inevitability. The lesson hit like a hammer. Preparation without presence is useless. Speed without calm invites defeat. By the end of the first week, the warrior glimpsed the path before him. The cracks of untested mind and ego had been revealed. He understood that the real enemy was not the mentor, not the storm, not the imagined opponent outside, but the chaos inside himself. Muscles and reflexes could not save him here. Only relentless self-mastery could render him unbreakable. The storm outside eased, leaving the world dripping and raw. The warrior's breath slowed, but his mind remained restless. Still, a seed of understanding had been planted. To endure pressure, one must first confront the unseen fractures within. His journey had begun, not with victory, but with awareness. Tomorrow, silence itself would become a weapon, and the warrior would learn that stillness is sharper than any blade. Morning light broke through the clouds, diffused by the mist that clung to the mountains like a shroud. The warrior awoke before dawn, muscles stiff, mind restless, yet something had shifted. The previous week's lessons lingered, subtle but insistent. The awareness of hesitation, the recognition of ego, the intimate acquaintance with fear. He realized that strength without comprehension of the self was an illusion. One could strike with precision, but under pressure, that blade could falter. The mentor watched silently as the warrior prepared for the day. There were no speeches, no instructions. Presence was the language now, and the warrior began to understand that every movement, every breath, every adjustment carried meaning. The act of tying his gi, walking to the training mat, centering his stance. These were not mundane routines, but the forging of discipline. Each action became deliberate, a rehearsal for the pressure yet to come. Sparring resumed, but the approach had changed. The warrior no longer lunged with desperate intent. He observed, measured, felt the flow of energy between himself and the mentor. Every feint, every hesitation, every pause revealed itself as an opportunity to practice control. He began to anticipate without force, to react without impulsivity, to move not only with the body, but with the mind attuned to every vibration of his circumstance. The mentor's critiques were few but precise. "Your body obeys what the mind believes," he said. "Fear is a signal, not a sentence. Ego is a whisper, not a command. Control them first, and the world becomes secondary." These words sank in slowly, like rain seeping into stone. The warrior felt the first taste of inner alignment, not yet mastery, but a glimmer of it. Physical endurance became intertwined with mental endurance. Long runs through muddy trails, repeated kata, hours of meditation in the stillness of the dojo, all tested the warrior's attention, patience, and presence. Fatigue became the mirror reflecting weaknesses in focus, boredom, the test of discipline. Each moment of discomfort was a teacher, revealing the fine lines where chaos had once held dominion over mind and body. By nightfall, the warrior's reflection in the water outside the dojo no longer betrayed the frantic energy he had felt at the start. His eyes were steadier, his posture more grounded. The storm within had not vanished. It would never vanish, but it was now visible, mapped, understood. Awareness had replaced ignorance, attention had replaced reaction. Strength had begun its quiet transformation. The mentor finally spoke, breaking the evening silence. "The path ahead is long. You'll be tested by the world, yes, but more by yourself. The unbreakable are forged from the inside out. Talent is fire. Discipline is steel. Without both, you remain brittle." The warrior knelt under the starlit sky, rain-slicked mountains surrounding him, and felt the first true weight of responsibility, not to defeat others, but to conquer the chaos within. The journey of becoming unbreakable had begun, and the lessons of presence, patience, and awareness would be the blade with which he honed himself. Next, the warrior would discover that silence itself could be wielded as a weapon, a force capable of sharpening mind and spirit beyond ordinary limits. Dawn arrived like a soft exhale, brushing pale light across the mist-drenched valley. The warrior sat alone, knees folded, spine erect, eyes closed. No sound stirred but the gentle rustle of wind through pine and the distant call of a hawk. For the first time, the world seemed both vast and contained, as if every element waited in stillness for him to notice. Yet inside, the mind churned, a turbulent river of doubt, distraction, and the familiar whisper of ego demanding attention. The mentor's voice had been clear. Silence is not absence. It is the edge of presence. Learn it, and your mind becomes a weapon sharper than any blade. The warrior had struggled with this. Sitting still seemed passive, even pointless. The body itched for motion. The mind longed for activity. But the mentor did not move, did not speak, did not yield. The warrior realized that stillness was not an avoidance. It was confrontation. Every thought, every desire, every pulse of fear had to be witnessed, not denied, not chased away. Hours stretched, measured only by the slow rhythm of breath. Inhalation, exhalation, inhalation. With each repetition, awareness deepened. He noticed the subtle pull of impatience, the subtle tremor of fear beneath the ribs, the quiet arrogance that suggested he already understood mastery. The river of the mind calmed, not vanished, but observed with clarity. The warrior began to feel the first taste of mental edge, that stillness which demanded presence, yet allowed no room for chaos. Physical practice was no less demanding. Movements were slow, deliberate, almost imperceptible. A kata executed with the intent of observing the energy in every muscle fiber, the alignment of every joint, the flow of intention behind each gesture. The mentor corrected nothing verbally. Instead, he adjusted his own posture, Chi-O, silent cue for the warrior to recognize the language of movement without words. Motion and stillness merged, revealing a rhythm that was invisible to the casual observer, but profound to the practitioner. By midday, the warrior's mind, once scattered like leaves in a storm, had begun to settle. Distraction no longer compelled him. Fear no longer dictated reaction. The paradox revealed itself. Stillness required action, yet the action was subtle, internal, deliberate. His presence became palpable, not loud, not forceful, but undeniable in its calm authority. The power of silence was emerging as a weapon, not for attack, but for mastery over himself. The mentor observed from a distance, eyes like steady embers. Pressure is external, control is internal. A mind disciplined in silence will navigate storms unshaken. The body follows the mind. The spirit follows both. The warrior absorbed this lesson, not as instruction, but as revelation. It was one thing to move under threat. It was another to hold inner clarity while every impulse demanded chaos. Evening fell, the forest now cast in violet shadows. The warrior rose, muscles fatigued, mind alert, spirit sharpened. The day's silence had not been empty. It had been forging a presence so precise it could cut through confusion and fear alike. The realization settled. Mastery under pressure begins not with action, but with the stillness that precedes it. Tomorrow the trials would escalate. Fear would be introduced as teacher, not enemy, and the warrior would learn that the unbreakable mind is forged when stillness is transformed into decisive action. The lesson of silence had begun, the quiet forge where focus, presence, and unshakable calm would become weapons against the chaos within. Night descended slowly, draping the valley in shadow. The warrior remained seated, the cold pressing into his skin, yet the fire within burned steadily. He had learned that silence was not a passive state. It was active observation, an intimate dialogue with his own mind. Every flicker of doubt, every pang of fear, every twitch of impatience became data, a signal to refine attention. With each moment of stillness, his inner awareness expanded, mapping the contours of thought, emotion, and instinct. The mentor approached without sound, a ghost of certainty in the dim light. "Now you will see why silence is a weapon," he said, voice low but resonant. The warrior followed his gaze to a narrow cliffside path above a rushing river. "Move without haste. Let your mind dictate nothing. Observe. Respond." At first, hesitation gripped him. The river's roar mirrored the turbulence in his chest. But then the lessons of stillness surfaced. Breath steady, eyes focused, movements deliberate, he advanced. Each step was measured, conscious, and precise. The body obeyed the mind, yet the mind no longer dominated. The two were aligned. As he navigated the path, fear rose again, but now it was different. It was no longer a tyrant. It was a teacher. The sensation sharpened his focus, illuminated gaps in awareness, and demanded presence. A slip of the foot or a faltering thought would have consequences, and the warrior understood that every challenge required full integration of mind, body, and spirit. The river below became a mirror. Turbulence observed, chaos measured, fear acknowledged, yet controlled. This was the essence of Musashi's principle. Silence in action, clarity in pressure. When he reached the far edge of the cliff, the warrior paused. No triumph stirred within, only calm comprehension. Silence had become a tool, not absence. It allowed him to perceive threats before they appeared, to act before hesitation could root, to move with a precision born of presence rather than reaction. The real mastery was invisible. Others would see only the confident steps, not the mental discipline that orchestrated them. Returning to the dojo, the warrior felt the subtle shift in himself. Thoughts no longer scattered, fear no longer dominant, ego restrained yet conscious. The mentor nodded silently, approval evident in the calm, steady gaze. "The storms you face outside will test every skill," he said. "But if the mind can be still, the body can be precise. The spirit unshaken, the warrior unbreakable." The lesson was clear. Silence is a weapon that cuts through doubt, fear, and distraction, shaping the inner world before confronting the outer. By the end of this day, the warrior understood a vital truth. To be unbreakable under pressure, one must first cultivate inner stillness. Action without presence was brittle. Presence without action was wasted. Only when the two converged, when silence became deliberate, could he hope to wield true strength under the fiercest storms. Tomorrow, fear would arrive not as enemy, but as ally, guiding the warrior deeper into mastery. Dawn arrived muted, painting the mountains in soft grey tones. The warrior stood at the edge of the training ground, muscles coiled, mind alert yet calm. The mentor watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable. "Today," he said, "you will meet fear not as enemy, but as guide." The warrior's chest tightened. Anticipation, anxiety, and the remnants of doubt intermingled. But he remembered the lessons of silence. Breath steady, gaze fixed. He nodded. The first exercise was deceptively simple. A sparring match against multiple opponents, each more skilled than he had ever faced. The goal was not victory, the mentor had explained, but presence. Every step, every parry, every strike demanded complete awareness. Panic threatened, a surge of adrenaline and instinctual fear, yet the warrior recalled the cliffside path, the river below, the power of stillness. Fear arose, but this time it illuminated weaknesses instead of paralyzing action. He began to move with deliberate rhythm, recognizing patterns in opponents' attacks before they unfolded. Fear became a mirror, reflecting his readiness, his hesitation, his attachment to ego-driven pride. Next came the endurance challenge. The warrior was led into a dense forest, the undergrowth thick, paths hidden, and the weather turning wet and cold. Alone, without aid or guidance, he had to navigate treacherous terrain, balancing speed with caution. Each misstep sent waves of doubt through his mind. Every slip reminded him of the consequences of distraction. Yet, with each careful step, he noticed a subtle shift. Fear no longer dictated the pace. It highlighted the edges where attention was required. His body, trained through repetitive drills, moved instinctively, while his mind processed each danger as data, not threat. The mentor introduced a third test: mental endurance. The warrior was left in isolation, facing simulated scenarios of failure, imagined opponents, whispered taunts, and visions of past defeats. Initially, the mind rebelled, constructing stories, conjuring panic. But the silence he had cultivated became a shield. Observing thought without attachment, he allowed fear to surface and pass. He realized that fear was information, an indicator of what mattered, what threatened imbalance, what demanded presence. With conscious acknowledgement, he transformed panic into heightened awareness, hesitation into measured action. By mid-afternoon, a transformation had begun. The warrior felt fear not as a paralyzing force, but as an active guide. It revealed gaps in readiness, sharpened perception, and compelled precision. Pain and exhaustion became teachers rather than obstacles, each moment a test of presence and discipline. He understood the paradox of the Bushido mind. The most dangerous strength comes not from suppressing fear, but from moving with it, through it, and alongside it. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the training ground. The warrior returned to the mentor, exhausted yet invigorated, mind clear, body aligned, spirit attentive. The mentor's gaze met his, calm and discerning. "You see now," he said, "fear is a signal, not a shackle. It is the map to your own weaknesses and the compass to your discipline." The warrior nodded, feeling a quiet surge of understanding. Courage was no longer an abstract concept. It was the active choice to act under pressure, to let fear refine rather than ruin. The lessons of fear would deepen tomorrow, guiding the warrior toward mastery that is unshakable, precise, and fully alive under pressure. Night fell, and the forest transformed. Shadows stretched long, shapes shifting with the wind. The warrior sat beside a flickering fire, muscles trembling from exertion, yet his mind sharper than ever. The mentor approached silently, a shadow among shadows, and spoke without preamble. "Fear will return. It always does. Your task is not to banish it, but to guide it." The warrior exhaled slowly, recalling the day's trials, the sparring, the treacherous paths, the isolation, and understood. Mastery lay in partnership with fear, not conquest over it. The next phase was subtle, almost invisible. The mentor instructed the warrior to meditate while listening to the forest at night. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of nocturnal birds, the drip of water from wet branches. Each sound became a signal, each vibration a test of attention. Thoughts of inadequacy and doubt tried to intrude, yet he allowed them to arise and dissolve, as clouds passing over a moonlit sky. He discovered that fear, once observed rather than resisted, held no dominion. It became a guide to sharpened awareness and measured action. The mentor's final challenge that night was a controlled duel, designed not to teach technique, but presence. Armed lightly, each strike demanded full commitment, yet every attack was layered with uncertainty. The warrior felt the familiar surge of fear, the heartbeat quickening, the sweat beading, the instinctive tension in muscles. But this time, it did not fracture him. Each fear-driven impulse was noted, assessed, and redirected. Movements flowed not from panic, but from disciplined anticipation. Pain and near misses became information, shaping choices with surgical precision. By midnight, the warrior's understanding of fear had transformed. What once was a destabilizing force now acted as a mirror and compass. Fear revealed vulnerabilities and signaled opportunities for presence. Courage emerged not from absence of anxiety, but from consistent action despite it. The warrior realized that all true strength, mental, physical, and spiritual, arises not in the absence of challenge, but in the deliberate navigation through it. As the fire dwindled, the mentor spoke one final time, voice low yet penetrating. Remember this: fear is the ally of the disciplined mind. Ignore it, and it becomes your master. Observe it, and it becomes the instrument of your precision, courage, and unshakable presence. The warrior bowed, understanding that the journey was far from over, yet a foundational principle had been mastered: the integration of fear as a teacher rather than a tyrant. The night air was crisp as he lay beneath the canopy, muscles aching, mind alert, spirit steady. Fear had been faced, analyzed, and transformed. The warrior now moved closer to the unbreakable state the Musashi teachings promised, a presence forged in pressure, honed by challenge, and refined in silence. Tomorrow, discipline would be forged in repetition, and the path toward unshakable resilience would become visible. Dawn broke over the rugged mountains, painting the cliffs in muted gold. Rain had ceased, leaving the earth slick and the air sharp with the scent of wet pine. The warrior moved through the clearing, each step deliberate, each breath measured. His muscles ached, his skin prickled with residual fatigue, yet his mind remained alert, a silent witness to the rhythm of his body and surroundings. Today marked the beginning of the most demanding phase of his training, a crucible where repetition, endurance, and mental focus would forge strength far beyond mere technique. The mentor's presence was calm, almost imperceptible, yet it radiated authority. "Every motion you repeat is a reflection of your mind," he said. "Discipline is the fire, repetition the hammer. If you allow monotony to break your focus, you break yourself." The warrior listened, nodding, aware that this stage would require more than skill. It demanded a surrender of ego and a willingness to endure unseen effort. Training began with the fundamentals, yet at a level that pushed both body and spirit. Strikes and blocks were executed hundreds of times, each movement assessed for precision, intent, and alignment. Breath control was synchronized with motion. Every inhalation and exhalation became a metronome guiding speed, power, and presence. The warrior's mind, once prone to wandering, tightened around the repetition, forming a delicate tension between effort and flow. Fatigue set in quickly. Muscles screamed, joints protested, yet the mentor encouraged continuation, reminding him that true resilience emerges not when comfort permits, but when it resists. The warrior discovered a paradox. The monotony of repetition liberated creativity, attention, and clarity. With each cycle, small adjustments compounded, transforming imperfect movement into precision, hesitation into instinct, and distraction into unwavering focus. Science validates this principle. The neural pathways of skill deepen through consistent practice, creating automaticity that withstands pressure. Beyond physical training, mental exercises became the forge's fire. Meditation periods punctuated movement drills, encouraging reflection on each action's purpose and alignment with the inner self. Ego, once eager to claim victory in small accomplishments, was set aside. Every moment became practice, every breath an opportunity for refinement. The warrior realized that mastery was not revealed in singular triumphs, but in the accumulation of tiny, disciplined choices repeated without applause or recognition. By midday, the warrior's movements began to shift. Precision replaced effort. Presence replaced struggle. His mind, previously scattered by doubt and impatience, now directed intention with clarity. Subtle victories accumulated, invisible yet potent. A perfectly timed strike, a controlled exhalation under strain, the ability to sustain focus despite fatigue. Discipline was no longer a burdensome requirement. It had become both shield and sword, a force shaping every thought, motion, and decision. Yet the mentor warned, "Do not confuse repetition with mindlessness. The fire does not temper a dull blade. Each strike, each breath must be observed, refined, and aligned. Only then does strength become dangerous in its precision, invisible until needed." The warrior absorbed these words, understanding that true power lay not in display, but in the quiet command of self. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, his body battered yet attuned, the warrior felt the first stirrings of transformation. Strength was emerging, not loud, not showy, but steady, disciplined and resilient. He glimpsed the principle that Musashi had taught across centuries. The unbreakable warrior is forged in the unseen hours of repetition, under pressure, and with unwavering presence. Tomorrow, the warrior would confront the ego in the mirror, integrating lessons from fear, discipline, and repetition into true mastery. Night fell, and the dojo's lanterns cast long, flickering shadows across the wooden floor. The warrior's arms trembled, his breath shallow, yet his gaze remained steady. Every repetition, every strike, every measured breath had begun to etch itself into muscle memory, transforming struggle into rhythm, effort into presence. He understood now that discipline was not a momentary burst of willpower, but a continuous, invisible force that sustained action long after desire had faded. The mentor observed silently, stepping forward only when necessary. "Fatigue reveals truth," he said. "It exposes weakness, impatience, and attachment. Those who endure it learn that mastery is forged not in comfort, but in fire." The warrior felt this truth pulse through him. Pain no longer distracted. It became feedback. Fatigue no longer limited. It became measurement. Each sensation was integrated into awareness, teaching him to move with precision under strain, to act decisively when hesitation could destroy opportunity. Training extended into endurance exercises, climbing slippery slopes, balancing on narrow ridges, and moving swiftly through uneven terrain. Every step demanded control, focus, and composure. The warrior discovered a subtle yet powerful alignment. Mind guiding body, breath controlling motion, spirit sustaining resilience. The chaos of doubt and ego that had previously arisen now ebbed under the steady rhythm of disciplined repetition. Musashi's principle crystallized. Mastery under pressure is less about physical skill than about the relentless refinement of presence and will. The repetition drills intensified. Strikes were executed with sharpened intention, defensive patterns rehearsed until instinct replaced deliberation, and meditation periods extended until the warrior's mind could hold still, even amidst exhaustion. The dojo became a crucible where each repetition fired the steel of character, and the invisible accumulation of effort transformed the warrior from reactive to anticipatory, from fragmented to aligned. Science supports this. Deliberate, high-frequency practice strengthens neural circuits, making rapid, precise response under stress second nature. By the late hours, the warrior's understanding deepened. Strength was no longer measured in raw force or speed, but in control, the ability to act under pressure without succumbing to fear, distraction, or ego. Each movement flowed, deliberate yet fluid. Every thought aligned with purpose. Each decision emerged from awareness, honed through countless repetitions. Discipline had become the spine of his being, invisible yet unyielding, forming the foundation of unbreakable resilience. The mentor nodded in approval, sensing the shift. "You are learning," he said quietly. "Discipline has become presence. Presence has become strength. But remember, the final mastery lies not in repetition alone, but in integration. Fear, ego, and discipline must converge in harmony." The warrior absorbed this, aware that the coming days would test his inner alignment more than his physical endurance. As the lanterns dimmed, the warrior reflected on the day. Pain had been endured, monotony transformed into mastery, and fatigue shaped into resilience. He had begun to embody the first true level of unbreakable presence. Calm under strain, precise in action, and disciplined in thought. The fire of repetition had forged a foundation that would support him through greater challenges to come. The next chapter would confront the ego itself, the final obstacle to turning disciplined effort into true, unshakable inner strength. The dawn was pale and cold, mist curling along the mountains like a quiet warning. The warrior stood alone, the chill of the air brushing against his skin, yet he felt the warmth of focus and presence burning within. After weeks of relentless practice, repetition, and disciplined endurance, he had begun to command his body and mind. Yet the mentor's gaze reminded him, mastery was incomplete. There remained a hidden battlefield, one where strength could falter without a trace, the arena of ego. The mentor's voice broke the silence. Strength without humility is fragile. Power without reflection is a liability. You must face yourself before facing the world. With these words, the warrior realized that every skill, every measure of discipline could be undermined by the subtle whisper of pride, the desire for recognition, or the illusion of superiority. Ego had been present all along, unnoticed, yet shaping reactions, coloring decisions, and clouding clarity. It was an enemy not of brute force, but of perception. The first exercise was deliberate, reflection in stillness. The warrior knelt before a small pool of water, observing the ripples of his own reflection as he moved and breathed. Each motion revealed a distraction, a subtle tightening of the jaw, a narrowing of vision, a surge of self-importance hidden beneath concentration. The mentor guided him. Observe without judgment. Witness ego as you do a storm on the horizon, present, inevitable, but not to be obeyed. Next came sparring exercises, designed not for victory, but for revelation. Each bout exposed not the weakness of the body, but the distortions of the mind. Pride surged when a strike landed perfectly, jealousy flared when an opponent succeeded, and impatience rose when progress felt slow. Each reaction was catalogued in the warrior's awareness, a map of the ego's influence. Through controlled failure, he learned the paradox of mastery. One must act decisively and skillfully, yet remain unattached to outcome. True strength is not assertion, but alignment. It is discipline married to insight. Mentally, the warrior confronted old narratives of self-importance. "I am capable because I am superior," his mind whispered. "I deserve recognition," it urged. With disciplined attention, he traced the origins of these thoughts, observing their impermanence, their fluctuation like wind over the mountains. Neuroscience confirms that self-referential thoughts activate circuits associated with reward and ego reinforcement. By witnessing them without action, the warrior began to weaken their hold, rewiring his mind to respond with awareness rather than compulsion. The mentor introduced visualization, imagining himself in high-stakes encounters, sensing the ego rising, and responding with calm, deliberate presence. Each imagined scenario allowed the warrior to practice restraint, humility, and clarity. Ego became a tool, not a tyrant, a signal, not a master. Slowly, the warrior began to see that strength grounded in self-reflection was more formidable than raw skill alone. By midday, the warrior felt the first tangible shift. His movements during practice were less reactive, less performative, more precise and unhurried. His mind no longer scrambled for approval or validation. Attention was present in each strike, each block, each breath. Ego had not disappeared, but it no longer dictated his rhythm or clouded his judgment. Musashi's teaching resonated. Mastery arises when skill, discipline, and humility converge, when the inner mirror reflects truth rather than vanity. The mentor observed silently, the mountain breeze rustling the trees. "You are learning," he said. "But remember, ego is resilient. It will test you in every duel, every challenge, every moment of doubt. Your task is not to destroy it, but to integrate it, to serve, not rule." The warrior nodded, feeling the weight of this truth. The final frontier of inner strength lay not in motion, but in perception, not in endurance, but in self-awareness. The final chapter awaits, the warrior's culmination, where inner mastery under pressure becomes visible in unshakable action. Evening draped the mountains in deep indigo, and the warrior's body ached from the day's relentless training. Yet the fatigue was no longer a burden. It was a reminder of effort aligned with purpose. The mentor led him to the cliff's edge, the wind whipping against their faces, and spoke. "The true test is not in practice alone. It is in action, in choice, in the moment when the ego whispers and the mind must act." The warrior stepped forward into a series of controlled duels, each opponent chosen to provoke pride, frustration, and competitiveness. Every strike, parry, and feint was measured, not with haste or aggression, but with deliberate awareness. When a rival attempted to bait him with insult or challenge, the warrior felt the familiar surge of ego, but this time he observed it. The impulse to react was met with presence, breath, and intention. He moved as though his body were an extension of the calm mind within, each action precise, each decision deliberate. Failures came, as they always would. A misstep here, a defensive lapse there. Yet each moment of imperfection became a teacher. Rather than feeding self-importance or frustration, the warrior catalogued the lesson. Where attention faltered, ego had gained a foothold. Where discipline waned, presence weakened. Each recognition was a step toward integration. Strength was now inseparable from self-awareness. Power was born not of dominance, but of alignment. The mentor guided him through meditation at the summit, the cold wind biting, the horizon stretching endlessly. Observe the mind as a mountain observes the clouds. Ego will rise and fall. Your task is not to conquer it with force, but to act in harmony, letting it inform without controlling. In this silent communion, the warrior felt the culmination of all prior trials. Fear met with courage, discipline tempered with insight, ego observed without surrender. Scientific studies support this principle. Conscious observation of internal impulses strengthens neural pathways associated with self-regulation and emotional control. The warrior, through centuries-old practice, was achieving the same effect, an ability to witness, measure, and respond rather than react. The chaotic surge of pride or desire no longer dictated movement. Instead, awareness guided every choice. By nightfall, the warrior moved with an unspoken authority. Each motion in the dojo was fluid, controlled, and purposeful. His presence commanded attention not through loud action, but through quiet precision. Ego had not disappeared. It had been reshaped, integrated, and subordinated to awareness. Where once pride might have provoked rash strikes, now clarity and strategy governed. Where once fear might have frozen him, focus allowed deliberate action. The Bushido ideal, the fusion of mind, body, and spirit, was manifest. The mentor nodded, silent approval radiating through the space. You have glimpsed the edge of mastery. Remember, this is not the end. Ego will reappear in every trial, every pressure point, every moment of distraction. Yet now, it is a tool, not a tyrant. Inner strength is born when discipline, courage, and presence govern, and ego is the servant, not the master. As the warrior descended the mountainside under starlight, each step was measured, each breath deliberate, each heartbeat a quiet testament to the transformation within. He was no longer merely skilled. He was aligned, disciplined, and unbreakable in the face of internal turbulence. Ego, once a shadow of weakness, had become a mirror reflecting mastery. Next awaits the final chapter where all lessons converge. The warrior faces the ultimate trial, revealing the full measure of unbreakable inner strength. Dawn crept over the jagged peaks, painting the valley in muted gold. Mist lingered in the hollows, and the air carried the crisp scent of pine and wet stone. The warrior stood alone, the quiet before the trial settling like a living presence around him. Every muscle, every breath, every heartbeat was aligned. The night's lessons, fear-faced, ego-tempered, discipline-forged, had coalesced into a silent, unshakable readiness. The mentor approached, moving as if part of the wind itself. "Today, you face no ordinary test," he said. "The challenge is not to defeat an opponent, but to remain unbroken under the weight of circumstance, thought, and chaos. Your mind will be tested. Your body will be tested. Your spirit will be tested. Victory is measured not in dominance, but in presence, awareness, and mastery over self." The trial was set on the cliffside overlooking the churning river below, a place where wind and rain turned movement into resistance, where the elements demanded attention at every step. The warrior's opponent was skilled, yet this was secondary. The real duel was within. The subtle flares of doubt, the quiet whispers of ego, the undercurrent of fear that lingered even after months of preparation. As the first clash of wooden swords rang out, the warrior felt every impulse, past hesitations, lingering fears, flickers of pride, arise. He did not suppress them. He acknowledged them, like observing clouds passing over a mountain peak. Each strike was precise, measured, and intentional. Where before pressure might have broken him, now he moved with calm certainty. The body acted as the mind directed, the spirit grounded in awareness. The mentor observed silently from the edge, noting the transformation. Research in neuroscience shows that repeated exposure to stress, combined with mindful regulation of attention and emotion, enhances resilience and the capacity for disciplined response under pressure. The warrior's months of rigorous Musashi training had created this effect in the most extreme, real-world scenario, a crucible where mind, body, and spirit were tested in concert. The wind tore at his cloak, rain plastered hair to his forehead, and every movement required conscious balance. Each time fear or self-doubt threatened to intrude, he breathed, centered, and acted. Musashi's principle was alive. Mastery is not reaction, but presence. Strength is not aggression, but alignment. Pressure is not an enemy, but a forge. Even as his opponent attempted to exploit openings, the warrior's responses were seamless, flowing. Chaos no longer dictated action, it fueled clarity. Every strike, every step, every breath was deliberate. The once unseen cracks within him had closed, filled with disciplined presence. The unbreakable spirit Musashi described was no longer theory, it was reality. The storm raged around him, yet inside, the warrior was calm as a still pond, reflections unbroken by the wind. This was the culmination of fear faced, ego subdued, discipline honed. Each prior lesson, silence, repetition, courage, presence, found expression in every motion. The warrior was no longer merely skilled. He had become a living embodiment of unbreakable inner strength. The mentor's voice cut through the roar of wind. Remember, the world outside is unpredictable. The measure of a warrior is not in the fight itself, but in mastery over the self. Today, you are tested, and today, you are whole. The final confrontation continues, revealing the full, unshakable power of mind, body, and spirit. The duel pressed on, but the warrior moved as if he were both observer and participant. Every motion was rooted in awareness, every decision born from presence. The wind attempted to unbalance him, the rain threatened to obscure vision, yet he flowed through the elements, each step, each strike, perfectly timed. Fear, once a tyrant that quickened the heartbeat and clouded judgment, was now an advisor, highlighting vulnerability, refining precision, guiding him to action without hesitation. In one fluid motion, he disarmed his opponent, not with brute force, but with timing, patience, and absolute calm. The opponent's eyes widened, not in defeat, but in recognition of a mastery that transcended mere technique. The warrior did not celebrate. There was no triumphal cry, no display of pride. Victory was silent, invisible, yet undeniable. This was Musashi's secret. The unbreakable are not those who dominate with aggression, but those whose presence commands the moment without ego. The mentor stepped forward, eyes quiet but approving. You have walked the path few endure. Strength is no longer an external measure. It is the alignment of thought, breath, and action under pressure. You are unbreakable because you have mastered what most fear, the chaos within. Science supports this transformation. Studies on expert performance under stress reveal that disciplined mental rehearsal, attention regulation, and habitual presence increase both reaction precision and emotional resilience. The warrior's training had rewired neural pathways, allowing instinct to emerge from deliberate preparation rather than panic. He moved as if time itself had slowed. Each strike, each adjustment, each breath calibrated to perfection. The storm began to ease, sunlight breaking through clouds. The river below reflected the first golden light of dawn. The warrior stood alone, his body still, his mind clear, his spirit unshaken. Pressure was no longer an external force, but a medium through which mastery expressed itself. The lessons of silence, fear, repetition, and discipline had converged into a living force, a mind and spirit as formidable as any blade. Ego, once a hidden adversary, lay dormant. Fear, once a cage, had become wings. Chaos, once a torrent, now flowed through him as energy directed by unbroken presence. The warrior's transformation was complete. He had become unshakable, not through force, but through relentless refinement of self, practiced in the crucible of internal and external pressure. The mentor bowed, the faintest smile breaking his stoic demeanor. Remember this, always, the most dangerous strength is quiet, invisible, and unassailable because it comes from within. No circumstance, no opponent, no fear can fracture it. You are the embodiment of Musashi's path. The world will test you, but you are prepared. The warrior stepped forward, alone on the cliff, the dawn painting the valley in golden light. He had become a figure of calm power, deliberate action, and disciplined spirit. Every movement, every thought, every breath was testimony to a journey that had forged mind, body, and spirit into an unbreakable force. Pressure no longer threatened. It revealed the depth of mastery. The final lesson resonated silently in the air. True unbreakable strength is not born from muscle or skill alone, but from the fearless, disciplined mastery of mind and spirit. The warrior, forged in fire and silence, now carried it in every step he took. With this, the path of the unbreakable warrior reaches its culmination, mind, body, and spirit aligned, unshakable under all pressures.